Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are doing something a little bit different today.
Yeah, a bit of a reality check, I'd say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because usually when we look at a career in tech, especially in data or engineering, we tend to wrap it in this very noble, almost cinematic narrative.
Right, the whole missionary approach.
You know the type.
Hmm.
You ask someone, why did you get into this field? And they sort of look off into the distance and say, well, I wanted to unlock the secrets of the universe. Or, I've always dreamed of optimizing SQL queries to save the world.
It's the standard answer you rehearse in the mirror before the interview because you think it's exactly what the hiring manager wants to hear.
Right, right. But today, we're looking at the career of David Effiong. He's an analytics engineer at Data Culture, and we're basing this deep dive on a really candid interview titled A Moment with David Effiong.
And that's from the Behind the Data newsletter by Iota Degbite.
Yes, exactly. And what struck me immediately, and I think what's really going to resonate with you, the listener, is that David doesn't play that game.
He really does it.
When he was asked why he got into data, he didn't talk about passion. He didn't talk about saving the world. He said point blank, my initial motivation was to gain a valuable skill that could increase my earning power.
You wanted the money,
He wanted the money.
which is incredibly refreshing.
It's just so honest.
Yeah.
It's a starting point
Yeah.
that I think most people actually have, but they just refuse to admit it out loud.
It is honest, and honestly, it's the most rational reason to enter a high-skill field. But if you stop there, you just have a job.
Right, you might even have a pretty miserable job.
Exactly. What makes David's story so compelling for us to unpack today is that it didn't stay about the money.
No, it evolved.
We're going to trace how that purely, mercenary motivation evolved into this genuine obsession with problem solving.
We're going to look at what happens when you are the first hire in a very high-pressure startup.
And why boring stuff like documentation is actually a literal survival strategy.
Plus, why he thinks writing code is just as creative as writing music.
So let's set the scene here. David lands his first big role. He is the first data hire at a fast-paced startup based in Lagos.
Right.
Now, for those outside the industry, being an analytics engineer usually means you sit right between the data engineers who build the pipes and the analysts who make the charts. You're the bridge.
Well, in a mature company, yes, you are the bridge. But in a startup,
It's different.
oh, totally different. You are the bridge, you are the water under the bridge, and you are the person building the bridge while the traffic is already trying to cross it.
Wow.
David calls this the pressure cooker, and honestly, that might be a massive understatement.
I want to drill into that pressure cooker concept for a second because pressure is a pretty generic term we throw around a lot. Like, oh, I have a deadline, I'm under pressure.
Sure, everyday stress.
Yeah, but what does that actually look like on a random Tuesday morning for David?
Well, imagine walking in on day one. There is no senior engineer to onboard you.
There is no runbook. There's no manual that explains how the database is structured. There are just stakeholders from marketing, sales, product, and they need answers right now.
And you are the only person in the entire building who even speaks the language of data.
Completely alone in that vertical.
So you're operating without any safety net at all. If you don't know the answer, you can't just lean over and ask the guy at the next desk.
You can't. And you have to remember the context of the Lego startup ecosystem, too. It is incredibly dynamic and moves so fast, and it's hyper-competitive. Time is the one single resource you just do not have.
So what did he do?
David talks about having to wear multiple hats simultaneously. He couldn't just sit in a corner and optimize code or write pretty scripts.
He had to understand the actual business operations.
Immediately. Because if he didn't, he couldn't prove his ROI.
ROI, return on investment. That feels like such a heavy burden for a first hire. You essentially have to justify your own salary in real time every single day.
Essentially, yes. Because in a lean startup, every headcount really matters. If the data team, which again means just you, isn't showing tangible value, you're just overhead.
You're just a cost center.
Exactly. David realized very quickly that he couldn't hide behind technical jargon. He couldn't go to the CEO and say, oh, well, the back end is refactoring today.
They wouldn't care.
No. He had to show that his work was actually helping the company make money or save money right then and there.
That sounds exhausting, honestly. I think I would just be in a constant state of panic.
It is exhausting. But here's the interesting twist. David actually frames it as a positive thing.
Really? How so?
He says this total lack of a safety net sharpened his versatility. It's a trial by fire.
Because when you don't have a specific lane, you just have to learn the whole road.
Precisely. He says this forced him to stop thinking about tasks. Like, he stopped asking, did I finish this ticket? Or did I write this query?
And started thinking about what?
Impact. It accelerates your professional maturity because you see the direct line between a broken data pipeline and a genuinely bad business decision.
You realize, if I don't fix this bug, the CEO makes a terrible call, and we might literally not be here next year.
Exactly. You see the stakes.
Speaking of bad calls and broken pipelines, that actually leads us to a specific war story he shares. And I think this is the kind of nightmare scenario that keeps every data person awake at night.
Oh, yes, the duplicates incident.
Yeah. Let's walk the listeners through this. So he's working on a project to improve the data infrastructure for reporting. The stakeholders want visibility. They want the dashboard.
Standard stuff. Everyone wants to see the line go up and to the right.
Right. Everyone loves a dashboard. It's the shiny object.
It makes people feel like they know what's happening. But David does something really crucial here. Before just building the pretty charts, he decides to audit the underlying data.
He checks the pipes.
He checks the pipes. And what he found was a complete mess. Specifically, the system was riddled with duplicate entries.
Okay. For you listening who maybe aren't in the weeds of data engineering every day, why is a duplicate entry such a catastrophe? Is it just a little messy, or are we talking about a disaster?
Oh, it's a total disaster.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you are counting sales. If a customer buys one item for $100, but your system records it twice, your report says you made $200.
So you think you're doing twice as well as you actually are.
Right. If you're a subscription business, maybe you think you have double the subscribers.
Oh, wow. So the stakeholders at this startup had been looking at numbers that were completely inflated.
Exactly. They were flying high on false data. They probably thought they were crushing all their targets.
So now David is in a terrible position.
The worst. He's the new guy. He's supposed to be the hero bringing all these great insights. And instead, he has to walk into a meeting with leadership and drop a bomb.
He has to say, hey, you know that massive growth you're celebrating? It's not real. And when I fix this, your stats are going to drop off a cliff.
Yeah. That is a brutal conversation to initiate.
I mean, I'm fixing the problem, and the result of my fix is that we look like we're failing. That takes some serious nerve.
It does. But this is the key insight moment for this part of his journey. David emphasizes that you absolutely have to manage those expectations.
You have to explain it before you deploy the fix.
Yes, you have to explain that the drop isn't a decline in performance, it's a return to reality.
You weren't losing money. You just never had it to begin with.
Precisely. And the lesson he pulls from this, and this is what is so important to internalize, is that data quality and validation must always come before visualization.
That feels like a golden rule we should print on a t-shirt for data teams. Data quality before visualization.
I'd wear it because a pretty dashboard based on bad data is infinitely worse than having no dashboard at all.
Because if you have no dashboard, you know you're guessing. You stay cautious.
Right, but if you have the bad dashboard, you think you know the truth. You have false confidence.
You're basically hallucinating.
Exactly. David's work here saved them from making major strategic decisions based on a phantom.
It's so interesting because data quality isn't the sexy part of the job. It's not AI, it's not machine learning, it's not some cool predictive algorithm. It's just cleaning.
It's the janitorial work that keeps the building standing. It's checking the foundation before you start painting the walls.
Which segues perfectly into the other very unsexy topic David is surprisingly passionate about. Documentation.
Yes.
He calls this the difference between continuity and chaos, which sounds incredibly dramatic for just, writing down code comments and maintaining a wiki page.
It sounds dramatic until you've lived through it.
To your point.
Have you ever worked on a team where the one person who knew everything just suddenly quit?
Yes, and it is terrifying.
Right. David shares a setback where he left a previous team or where others had left and the projects just totally collapsed. They died on the vine.
Because the knowledge just walked out the door with a person.
Exactly. That is the chaos he's talking about. Documentation is the only way to ensure continuity.
If you don't write down the business logic, like why we defined a churned user this specific way, what happened?
You are just renting your impact. The second you leave, your work becomes completely obsolete because no one else can maintain it or understand it.
So documentation is essentially the primary tool for building a legacy. It's how you make sure your work actually matters after you log off for the last time.
Yes. But let's be real here. Nobody likes doing it.
No one.
It's the vegetables of the data diet. Everyone wants the dessert. They want the modeling and the visualization, but you really have to eat your vegetables to grow.
David is pretty optimistic about the future here, though. He thinks AI is going to totally change this game.
He does. And honestly, I agree with him.
How so? Just by having an AI write the docs for us.
Partially, yeah. AI tools can automate a lot of the drudgery. They can generate descriptions of columns, map out dependencies, summarize scripts.
Which saves hours of typing.
It does.
Uh-huh.
But David makes a really nuanced point here that we can't miss. The intent still has to come from the human.
Meaning the AI doesn't know the business context.
Right. AI can explain what the code does, but it can't always explain why you chose to do it that particular way for that particular stakeholder.
That discipline, the effort to actually explain the context, is still entirely on you.
So AI removes the friction, but you still need the fundamental discipline.
Okay, so we've got the technical versatility born from the startup pressure cooker, the integrity of checking data quality, and the discipline of documentation. But then David kind of zooms out.
He goes macro.
Yeah, he drops a quote that I think we've all heard in business school or management books, but he applies it specifically to data teams. Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Classic Peter Drucker quote. But David's application of it is really fascinating.
What does that actually mean for an analytics engineer? I mean, you can't write code for culture.
No, but you can code for a culture. Look, David argues that you can have the absolute best tech stack in the world. You can have the cleanest data warehouse, the most expensive BI tools money can buy.
Right.
But if your team is data illiterate, none of it matters.
Data illiterate, that's a strong term.
It is, but it's a very real problem. Think about it. If the marketing team doesn't know how to interpret the dashboard you spent weeks building, they'll just ignore it.
And if the sales lead doesn't trust the numbers, they'll just go back to using their gut feeling.
Exactly. That is the culture eating your strategy. You built a Ferrari, but nobody in the company knows how to drive a stick shift.
So how do you actually fix that? You can't just force people to suddenly love spreadsheets.
No, you can't. David outlines a two-pronged approach to handle this.
Okay, what's prong number one?
Literacy. You have to actively invest time in teaching the team.
Like running internal workshops.
Yeah, running workshops, explaining what the metrics actually mean in plain English. You can't just assume they know the difference between active users and total signups. You have to build that bridge.
That makes sense. And the second prong?
Leadership mirroring. And this one is the big one.
What does leadership mirroring mean in this context?
It means the behavior absolutely has to start at the top. If this CEO makes decisions based on vibes, intuition, and just how they feel today, everyone else is going to do the exact same thing.
Right, they follow the leader.
But if the leader consistently stops a meeting and asks, where's the data to support this claim? That behavior naturally ripples down through the whole organization.
So as a data professional, part of your job is actually managing up. You have to coach your bosses on how to use you properly.
100%. If the leadership doesn't value the evidence, your entire strategy fails. David is essentially saying that you cannot be a successful data engineer in a vacuum.
You are partly an engineer, but you're also partly an educator.
An educator and an evangelist.
That's a really heavy realization.
Yeah.
You're not just building tools, you're literally teaching people how to think about their business.
Exactly.
I want to shift gears slightly to how David actually learned all of this, because he mentions a period during the COVID lockdowns, which I think a lot of us can strongly relate to, where he felt completely stuck.
Ah, yes, what he calls tutorial hell.
Tutorial hell.
It's a very specific kind of purgatory. I really think almost every self-taught developer has been there at some point.
Describe it for us. What does tutorial hell actually feel like?
It's that phase where you just keep taking online courses, you watch the video, you type the code exactly as the instructor does on screen, and it works perfectly.
You feel super productive.
Right. You get the little digital certificate at the end, you get the dopamine hit, but then you open a blank project to build something completely of your own, and you just freeze.
You realize you didn't actually learn how to solve problems. You just learned how to follow instructions very well.
Exactly. It's the difference between doing a paint-by-numbers kit and staring at a completely blank canvas.
And David realized he was stuck there. He was consuming all this content, but not building any real capability.
Right. And the way he broke out of it is incredibly insightful. He distinguishes between two distinct types of professional support: mentors and communities.
I really like this part. He says mentors give you depth and communities give you breadth. Let's break that down, because I think people very often confuse the two or try to use them interchangeably.
Okay, so think about his startup struggle early on. He's the first hire, right? He's drowning.
Right.
A community, like a huge Slack group, a Discord server, or a Reddit forum, they can give you general advice. They can say, hang in there, or hey, here's a cool new Python library you should check out.
That's Brett. It's a sense of belonging. It keeps you aware of industry trends.
Exactly. But it doesn't solve the specific crisis of, my boss hates these numbers and I have no idea how to explain it to him.
For that, you need a person.
Right. For that, he sought out a specific person. He actually went on LinkedIn and found Opiemi Fabi.
Someone who had actually been in that exact role before.
Yes, he reached out and got very specific, deep guidance on how to navigate the messy realities of his career stage.
So the lesson here is you have to know what you need at any given moment. If you're lonely or just want to keep up with the news, go find a community. But if you're lost in the specific details of your career trajectory, find a mentor.
Precisely. Don't expect a community to give you the deeply personalized roadmap that a mentor can.
And conversely, don't expect your mentor to be your 24/7 newsfeed. They serve totally different functions.
They do.
Now, we've talked a lot about the soft skills today, culture, mentorship, communication. But at the end of the day, David is an engineer. He writes code.
He does.
But he has a bit of a hot take on technical skills like SQL or Python.
He calls them enablers.
Enablers, meaning they aren't the main event.
Correct. And this connects right back to his transition from paycheck to passion.
So, right.
He stopped seeing SQL as the actual job. SQL is just the hammer. The job is building the house.
So if you just focus your entire career on getting really good at the syntax, you're missing the whole point of the work.
You're missing the creativity. And this is where David's personal background gets really interesting. Because he's not just a data guy. He has a whole other life.
Yes, the fun fact. He's a musician. A full-time musician at heart, is how he puts it.
And he draws a really beautiful parallel here between the two fields. Think about music for a second.
Yeah.
You have scales, rhythm, time signatures.
That's the structure.
That's the syntax. If you play the notes in the wrong order, it sounds bad. Just like if you write bad code, the program simply won't run.
But just knowing the scales doesn't magically make you Mozart?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The actual music comes from how you combine those rigid structural elements to express something new.
And David views data the exact same way.
He does. The creativity in data engineering isn't about just making things up. It's about the methodology.
Methodology is art, like that.
Yes. How do you design the solution? How do you architect a data model to answer a business question that leadership hasn't even thought to ask yet? That requires pure imagination.
The code is just the way you physically write down the solution your brain already imagined.
Right.
I love that. It totally reframes the whole profession. It's not just cold logic, it's structural art.
It really is. And he has a great piece of advice for when you inevitably get stuck in that creative process. Because, like any creative field, you are going to get blocked. He heavily warns against decision paralysis.
Which is so easy to fall into. Should I use this tool or that tool? Should I structure the table this way or that way?
David says, just move. Don't agonize over going left or right. Just take a step. Data work is inherently iterative.
You can always refactor the code later.
You can change the table, but you cannot steer a parked car.
That is life advice, perfectly disguised as coding advice. You can't steer a parked car. Just get moving.
It's universally true.
So we've tracked David's whole journey today, from a guy who just wanted a bigger paycheck to increase his earning power, to a strategic partner who sees writing code as a creative outlet. It's a pretty incredible arc. What do you think is the biggest takeaway here for you listening right now?
I think the biggest takeaway is that technical skills are just the entry fee. We obsess so much over learning the new tool, the new language, the new framework.
But that's not what made him successful.
No. David's career growth didn't come from knowing more Python syntax than the next guy. It came from all the messy stuff.
The human stuff.
The human stuff. It came from having the sheer guts to look a stakeholder in the eye and tell them their data was completely wrong. It came from the discipline to write tedious documentation when nobody was forcing him to.
It came from understanding the business culture and realizing he had to teach his team, not just serve them reports.
Exactly. It's the profound realization that you aren't paid to write code. You're paid to solve complex business problems using code.
And sometimes the most valuable thing you can possibly do is the boring thing like deleting duplicate rows so the company doesn't crash into a wall.
That is real passion. That is real impact.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with one final thought from David. He gave some advice on how to learn, and honestly, reading it, I fully expected him to list a fancy boot camp or some expensive university degree.
But he didn't. He pointed to the most obvious tool on the planet.
Google.
It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? Just Google it.
It does.
But his point is actually very profound. He said, don't wait for permission to learn.
Because we do that, don't we? We sit around waiting for a mentor to magically appear, or for our company to pay for an expensive training course, or for someone to just hand us the right book.
We wait for someone to save us. We wait for a download knowledge button that doesn't exist.
And David is basically saying the answer is almost certainly already out there on the internet. You just have to be willing to ask the question and dig for the answer yourself.
That is the single only difference between being stuck in tutorial hell and being a real engineer. It's just the ability to relentlessly find your own answers.
So, here's our question for you to mull over today as you go about your work. Is there a problem you're currently stuck on, whether in your career or your life, where you're secretly waiting for an expert or a guide to show you the way?
And what would happen if you just assumed that the answer was already waiting for you, just one well-phrased search query away?
A very provocative thought to end on. Take agency over your own learning. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into David Effiong's journey. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you then.